Maya Rodriguez never expected her Saturday morning to change everything. She sat in the bleachers at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado, watching her younger brother Jake attempt to complete his final SEAL qualification exercise. The California sun beat down mercilessly, but Maya barely noticed the heat. Her stomach churned with nervous energy as she watched Jake struggle through the obstacle course below. She had driven down from Los Angeles specifically to support Jake through this crucial day. Their parents couldn't make it. Their father was deployed overseas with the Army, and their mother was working double shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. Maya had taken time off from her job as a physical therapist to be here, knowing how much her presence would mean to Jake. The training facility buzzed with controlled chaos. Dozens of SEAL candidates moved through various exercises while instructors barked orders and evaluated every movement. Maya found herself fascinated by the precision and intensity of everything happening around her. These weren't just military exercises, they were tests of human endurance, mental toughness, and absolute dedication. Jake had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Ever since their father had been injured in Afghanistan, Jake had been determined to follow in his footsteps and serve his country. Maya remembered countless conversations where Jake spoke about wanting to make a difference, to protect others the way their father had protected his unit. Today was the culmination of months of grueling preparation. As Maya watched, she noticed a tall figure moving among the instructors with obvious authority. Even from a distance, she could see that this man commanded respect from everyone around him. His movements were efficient and purposeful, and other instructors deferred to him immediately when he approached. This had to be Commander David Sullivan, the officer Jake had mentioned so many times during their phone calls. Commander Sullivan was a legend in the SEAL community. At 34, he had already completed 4 combat deployments and had been awarded numerous commendations for valor. Jake spoke about him with a mixture of fear and admiration, describing him as the toughest but fairest instructor in the program. According to Jake, Sullivan had a reputation for pushing candidates beyond what they thought possible, but never asking for anything he wouldn't do himself. Maya shifted uncomfortably on the hard bleacher seat, trying to get a better view of Jake's progress. She had worn a simple tank top and jeans, not thinking much about her appearance when she left Los Angeles at dawn. The morning had started cool, but now the temperature was climbing rapidly. She rolled up her sleeves and adjusted her position, focused entirely on spotting her brother among the candidates below. From her research before coming here, Maya knew that this final exercise was designed to test everything the candidates had learned over the past 6 months. They would face physical challenges, mental puzzles, teamwork scenarios, and leadership tests all rolled into one comprehensive evaluation. The failure rate was notoriously high, and even candidates who had excelled throughout training sometimes couldn't handle the pressure of this final hurdle. Jake appeared and disappeared among the groups of candidates as they rotated through different stations. Maya tried to track his progress, but the distance and constant movement made it difficult. She found herself getting increasingly anxious, knowing how devastated Jake would be if he didn't make it through today. He had already invested so much time, energy, and emotional commitment into this goal. The morning progressed with various exercises that Maya couldn't fully understand from her vantage point. She saw candidates carrying heavy loads, working together to solve problems, and enduring what looked like incredibly demanding physical tests. The instructors maintained constant pressure, shouting corrections, and pushing the candidates to their limits. Around mid-morning, Maya noticed Commander Sullivan had moved closer to her section of the bleachers. He was observing a group exercise directly below where she sat, taking notes on a clipboard and occasionally calling out instructions to the candidates. For the first time, she could see him clearly. He was indeed an imposing figure, with the kind of presence that suggested years of leadership in high-stress situations. Sullivan's focus was entirely on the exercise below, but Maya found herself studying him with professional interest. As a physical therapist, she was trained to observe how people moved and carried themselves. The commander moved with the fluid confidence of someone in peak physical condition, but she also noticed subtle signs of old injuries, a slight favoring of his left shoulder, a barely perceptible adjustment in his gait that suggested a previous knee injury. The exercise below seemed to be reaching a critical point. Maya could see Jake's team struggling with what appeared to be a complex problem-solving scenario that combined physical and mental challenges. The stress was visible on all their faces as they worked against the clock. Commander Sullivan's attention was completely absorbed by their performance, and Maya found herself holding her breath as she watched both her brother and the man evaluating him. Maya reached for the water bottle in her bag, feeling the heat beginning to affect her. As she moved, her tank top shifted slightly, and she absently adjusted it without thinking about anything other than staying comfortable and maintaining her view of Jake's progress. The morning was turning out to be much more intense than she had anticipated, both physically due to the heat and emotionally due to her investment in Jake's success. Commander Sullivan continued his evaluation below, moving between different candidate groups and maintaining the high standards that had made him legendary among SEAL trainees. Maya couldn't help but admire his dedication to his role, even as she worried about how Jake was performing under such intense scrutiny. The man clearly took his responsibility for training America's elite warriors very seriously. The exercise rotation continued, and Maya tried to stay hydrated while keeping track of Jake's movements. She had no idea that within the next few minutes, a simple gesture would capture the attention of the very commander she had been observing, leading to a series of events that would change both their lives forever. For now, she remained just a concerned sister in the bleachers, focused solely on supporting her brother through the most important day of his military career. The California sun climbed higher, and the intensity of the training exercises below continued to build toward the day's climactic challenges. Commander David Sullivan prided himself on maintaining complete focus during training exercises. In 15 years of military service, he had developed an almost supernatural ability to observe multiple candidates simultaneously while processing their performance against the exacting standards required of Navy SEALs. Nothing should have been able to distract him during such a critical evaluation period. But something did. As he moved to get a better angle on candidate Rodriguez's team exercise, Sullivan's peripheral vision caught movement in the bleachers above. A young woman was adjusting her position, reaching for something in her bag. The motion caused her tank top to shift slightly, revealing her upper arm and shoulder area. What Sullivan saw there made him stop mid-step. Etched into her skin was a tattoo that Sullivan recognized immediately, though he hadn't seen it in over 3 years. It was the unit insignia of the 75th Ranger Regiment, 2nd Battalion, but not just any version of it. This was the specific commemorative design that had been created for Operation Steel Rain, a classified mission that Sullivan had participated in alongside Army Rangers in Afghanistan. Sullivan's mind raced as he processed what he was seeing. Very few people outside the military personnel directly involved in that operation would have access to that particular design. The tattoo was expertly done, clearly not some generic military ink picked from a parlor wall. Someone had taken considerable care to ensure every detail was perfect, down to the specific scrollwork that had been added to honor the 3 Rangers who had died during the mission. The woman in the bleachers seemed completely unaware that she had captured his attention. She was focused entirely on the training exercise below, her body language suggesting intense emotional investment in one of the candidates. Sullivan found himself studying her more carefully, trying to piece together the puzzle of how she had come to bear that particular piece of military art. Sullivan knew the Operation Steel Rain tattoo intimately because he carried one himself, though his was positioned on his ribs where it wasn't visible unless he was shirtless. Only 43 people had been involved in that mission, 12 SEALs, 28 Rangers, and 3 intelligence specialists. Of those 43, 7 had been killed in action, and several others had been wounded. The survivors had privately commissioned the commemorative tattoo design as a way to honor their fallen brothers. The mission itself had been a joint operation to extract a high-value target from a Taliban stronghold in the mountains near Kandahar. Intelligence had indicated that the target possessed information crucial to preventing a major terrorist attack on American soil. What was supposed to be a quick in-and-out operation had turned into a 14-hour firefight when they discovered the compound was much more heavily defended than expected. Sullivan remembered every detail of that night. The way the mountain air had felt thin and cold. The sound of enemy fire echoing off the rocky walls around them. The moment when Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez had thrown himself on a grenade to protect his squad, saving 6 lives while sacrificing his own. Rodriguez had been just 26 years old, with a wife and 2 children back home. The realization hit Sullivan like a physical blow. Rodriguez, the candidate below, wasn't just any trainee. He was Jake Rodriguez, and the woman in the bleachers had to be related to Marcus. Sullivan's eyes moved between the young SEAL candidate working through the exercise below and the woman watching from above. The family resemblance was unmistakable once he knew what to look for. Sullivan had attended Marcus Rodriguez's funeral at Arlington National Cemetery. He remembered the heart-wrenching scene of Marcus's widow, Elena, trying to comfort their 2 young children while receiving the folded flag. The children had been so small, a boy who couldn't have been more than 10, and a girl who looked to be in her early teens. The girl in the bleachers could very well be that same child, now grown into a young woman. The emotional weight of the connection threatened to overwhelm Sullivan's professional composure. Marcus Rodriguez had been one of the finest soldiers Sullivan had ever served alongside. His tactical instincts had been exceptional, but, more importantly, he had possessed the kind of moral courage and selfless dedication that defined the best of America's warriors. Marcus had talked constantly about his family, carrying pictures of his children and sharing stories about their achievements and dreams. Sullivan forced himself to refocus on the training exercise, but his mind continued processing the implications of what he had discovered. Jake Rodriguez was performing admirably in the current scenario, displaying the same kind of tactical thinking and leadership potential that his father had shown. The kid had clearly inherited more than just his father's last name. As the exercise progressed, Sullivan found his evaluation of Jake Rodriguez becoming more nuanced. He began seeing patterns in the young man's decision-making that reminded him powerfully of Marcus. There was the same willingness to put the team's success ahead of personal glory, the same instinctive understanding of when to lead and when to support others' leadership. The woman in the bleachers, Maya, Sullivan realized, remembering Marcus mentioning his daughter's name, continued watching with obvious anxiety. Sullivan could see the way her hands gripped the edge of the bleacher seat, the tension in her shoulders as she tracked her brother's progress. She clearly understood the significance of this day for Jake's future. Sullivan's attention was divided between his professional obligations and his growing emotional investment in the Rodriguez family drama playing out before him. He needed to maintain his objectivity as an instructor while processing the personal connections that made this evaluation unlike any other he had conducted. The exercise below reached a critical decision point, where Jake's team had to choose between 2 tactical approaches. Sullivan watched as Jake stepped forward to propose a solution that demonstrated both tactical sophistication and genuine leadership ability. It was exactly the kind of moment that separated successful SEAL candidates from those who weren't quite ready for the demands of special operations. Maya leaned forward in the bleachers, clearly sensing the importance of whatever was happening below. Sullivan found himself hoping that Jake would make the right choice, not just for the sake of the evaluation, but because he wanted Marcus Rodriguez's son to succeed. The weight of that desire conflicted with his responsibility to maintain impartial standards. Jake's proposal was sound, and his team members responded positively to his leadership. Sullivan made notes on his clipboard while simultaneously grappling with the unexpected emotional complexity of the situation. He had evaluated hundreds of candidates over the years, but none had carried the personal significance that Jake Rodriguez represented. The tattoo in the bleachers served as a constant reminder of bonds forged in combat and sacrifices made for brothers in arms. Sullivan knew that he would need to approach this situation carefully, balancing his professional obligations with the respect he owed to Marcus Rodriguez's memory and family. As the morning progressed toward the final phases of evaluation, Sullivan realized that this day would be significant for reasons that went far beyond the normal cycle of SEAL training. The discovery of that tattoo had opened a door to the past that would inevitably shape the future for everyone involved. The afternoon heat intensified as the final phase of SEAL qualification testing began. Maya had been sitting in the bleachers for nearly 6 hours, her anxiety building with each passing exercise. She could see the exhaustion setting in among all the candidates, including Jake, but she also witnessed their determination to push through despite their obvious fatigue. Commander Sullivan had positioned himself closer to her section of bleachers, though Maya assumed this was simply due to the logistics of observing the final exercise. She had no idea that he had been stealing glances at her tattoo throughout the day, or that her presence had fundamentally altered his emotional investment in Jake's performance. The final exercise was designed to test everything simultaneously: physical endurance, tactical decision-making, leadership under pressure, and the ability to function effectively as part of a team when pushed beyond normal human limits. Maya watched as Jake and his teammates faced a complex scenario that seemed to shift and evolve every few minutes, keeping them constantly off balance. Sullivan found himself caught between his professional obligations and his growing personal investment in the outcome. He had spent the last several hours researching what he could remember about Marcus Rodriguez's family, trying to piece together how the young woman in the bleachers had come to bear that commemorative tattoo. The most likely explanation was that Elena, Marcus's widow, had gotten the tattoo, and that Maya had chosen to honor her father's memory by getting a matching one. As Jake's team approached what appeared to be the climactic challenge of their evaluation, Maya noticed that the commanding officer below seemed to be paying particular attention to her brother's performance. She couldn't decide if this was a positive or negative development, but she found herself holding her breath as Jake stepped forward to address a critical tactical decision. Sullivan watched as Jake demonstrated the same kind of intuitive leadership that had made Marcus such an effective soldier. The young man assessed the situation quickly, consulted with his teammates, and proposed a solution that balanced risk with potential reward. It was exactly the kind of decision-making that SEALs needed to master, and Jake was displaying it naturally under extreme pressure. The exercise reached its conclusion, with Jake's team successfully completing their objectives, though Sullivan knew that success in the final exercise didn't guarantee passage through the overall evaluation. He would need to review all the day's performance data before making final recommendations about which candidates were ready to become Navy SEALs. As the candidates were dismissed for debriefing and final evaluation, Maya felt a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. Jake looked exhausted, but seemed satisfied with his performance as he disappeared into the facility with his teammates. Maya gathered her belongings, preparing to wait outside until Jake was released, and could tell her how the evaluation had gone. Sullivan faced a decision that went far beyond his normal post-exercise routine. Protocol dictated that he complete his evaluations and submit his recommendations through proper channels. But the personal connection he felt to the Rodriguez family created a compelling reason to break from standard procedure. Maya was walking toward the parking area when she heard someone calling behind her. She turned to see the commanding officer she had been observing throughout the day approaching with purposeful strides. Her heart rate increased immediately, fearing that something had gone wrong with Jake's evaluation. "Excuse me, miss," Sullivan said as he reached speaking distance. "Are you Jake Rodriguez's sister?" Maya nodded, unable to find her voice initially. The commander's presence was even more intimidating up close, though she sensed no hostility in his approach. "I'm Commander David Sullivan," he continued. "I was hoping I could speak with you for a few minutes, if you have time." Maya managed to respond. "Is Jake okay? Did something happen during the evaluation?" Sullivan quickly assured her that Jake was fine, and that his performance had been strong throughout the day. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something else entirely. I noticed your tattoo during the exercises today." Maya instinctively glanced down at her arm, suddenly self-conscious about the military insignia that was normally hidden under longer sleeves. "Oh, that. Most people don't recognize it." "I recognize it because I have the same one," Sullivan said quietly. "I served with your father during Operation Steel Rain." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She had gotten the tattoo 2 years earlier as a way to honor her father's memory and feel connected to the military service that had defined so much of his life. She had researched the design carefully, wanting to ensure that it accurately represented his unit and service record. But she had never expected to meet someone who had actually served alongside him. "You knew my father?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sullivan nodded solemnly. "Marcus Rodriguez was one of the finest soldiers I ever had the privilege of serving with. He saved my life, along with several others, during that operation. I've thought about him often over the years." Maya felt tears beginning to form as Sullivan continued speaking about her father. He described Marcus not just as a soldier, but as a person. His sense of humor, his dedication to his family, his natural leadership abilities, and his unwavering moral compass. These were aspects of her father that Maya remembered from childhood, but hearing them validated by someone who had witnessed them in combat created a powerful emotional connection. "Your father talked about you and Jake constantly," Sullivan said. "He was so proud of both of you. He carried pictures and would show them to anyone who would look. He especially loved talking about how smart you were and how determined Jake was to follow in his footsteps." The conversation continued for nearly an hour as Sullivan shared memories and stories that helped Maya understand her father's military service in ways she never had before. He described Marcus's tactical expertise, his ability to inspire confidence in his fellow soldiers, and the respect he commanded from both superiors and subordinates. Sullivan also explained the significance of the commemorative tattoo and the brotherhood that had been forged among the survivors of Operation Steel Ring. He told Maya about the annual memorial service that the survivors organized to honor their fallen comrades, and he invited her to attend the next gathering if she was interested in connecting with others who had served with her father. As their conversation drew to a close, Sullivan addressed Maya's concerns about Jake's evaluation. While he couldn't provide specific details about the scoring process, he assured her that Jake had demonstrated the qualities necessary for success as a Navy SEAL. More importantly, he had displayed the same character traits that had made Marcus such an exceptional soldier. "Your brother has earned his place in the teams," Sullivan said. "Your father would be incredibly proud of what Jake accomplished today." Maya felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't fully realized she had been carrying. The anxiety about Jake's performance was replaced by a profound sense of connection to her father's legacy and gratitude for the unexpected encounter with someone who had known him as a warrior and friend. Sullivan provided Maya with his contact information and encouraged her to reach out if she ever had questions about her father's service or if she wanted to learn more about the military community that had been so important to Marcus. He also suggested that Jake might benefit from hearing some of the stories about his father's military service once he completed his SEAL training. As they parted ways, Maya realized that what had started as a day of nervous observation had become something much more significant, a bridge to understanding her father's legacy and a connection to the military family that had shaped his life and ultimately led to his heroic sacrifice. 3 months later, Maya found herself standing outside the same Naval Special Warfare facility in Coronado, but this time for a very different reason. Jake had not only passed his SEAL qualification, but had graduated at the top of his class. Today was his official graduation ceremony, and the entire Rodriguez family had gathered to witness this milestone achievement. Commander Sullivan had stayed in touch with Maya following their initial meeting, sharing stories about her father and providing insights into Jake's progress through the final phases of SEAL training. These conversations had evolved from purely memorial discussions into a deeper friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. Maya had attended the annual Operation Steel Rain memorial service that Sullivan had mentioned, where she met other survivors who had served with her father. The experience had been emotionally overwhelming, but ultimately healing, providing her with a broader understanding of the military community that had shaped her family's history. The memorial service had also deepened her connection with Sullivan, who had served as her guide through the complex emotions of honoring fallen warriors while celebrating the bonds formed among survivors. Maya discovered that Sullivan carried his own emotional scars from combat, and their conversations became mutually supportive as they processed their shared connection to Marcus Rodriguez's legacy. Jake's graduation ceremony was everything Maya had hoped it would be. As she watched her brother receive his SEAL Trident pin, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride mixed with the bittersweet knowledge that their father wasn't there to witness this achievement. But, in a way, Marcus was present through the stories that Sullivan and other veterans had shared about his service and sacrifice. Sullivan had requested permission to present Jake with his trident, a gesture that carried deep significance within the SEAL community. As he pinned the insignia to Jake's uniform, Sullivan spoke quietly about the honor of serving alongside Jake's father and his confidence that Jake would uphold the same standards of excellence and integrity. Following the ceremony, the Rodriguez family gathered for a celebration dinner where Sullivan joined them as an honored guest. Elena Rodriguez had driven down from Los Angeles with Maya, and She was deeply moved by Sullivan's stories about Marcus's military service. The evening became a celebration not just of Jake's achievement, but of the enduring bonds that connected military families across time and tragedy. During the dinner, Sullivan announced that he had been selected for a new assignment that would take him to Virginia Beach to work with SEAL Team 6. While this represented a significant professional advancement, it meant leaving California and the training command where he had served for the past 4 years. Maya felt a surprising sense of loss at the news of Sullivan's transfer. Over the previous months, their friendship had become an important part of her life. Sullivan had helped her understand her father's military service in ways that brought comfort and closure to long-standing questions about his death and its meaning. But Sullivan had a proposal that would address the geographical separation. He had been thinking about their conversations regarding Maya's work as a physical therapist and her interest in serving military personnel who had been injured in combat. He knew of opportunities at the military medical facilities in Virginia Beach that would allow Maya to combine her professional skills with her desire to honor her father's memory by serving other veterans. The idea had been developing in Sullivan's mind for weeks. Maya's expertise in physical therapy, combined with her personal understanding of military families and combat-related trauma, made her an ideal candidate for working with wounded warriors. Sullivan had already made inquiries and learned that several positions were available for qualified physical therapists at the medical facilities that served the special operations community. Maya was initially hesitant about such a dramatic life change. She had established her career in Los Angeles and had built a life there that provided stability and professional satisfaction. But the opportunity to work directly with veterans who had experienced injuries similar to those that had affected her father's unit was deeply appealing. Jake strongly encouraged Maya to consider Sullivan's proposal. He could see how much their friendship had meant to her emotional healing, and he believed that Maya's skills and personal experience would make her an exceptional advocate for injured veterans. Jake also admitted that having both Maya and Sullivan nearby as he began his career as a Navy SEAL would provide him with a support system that honored their father's memory. Elena Rodriguez offered the perspective that Marcus would have wanted Maya to pursue any opportunity that allowed her to serve others while following her heart. She had observed the positive changes in Maya since meeting Sullivan and believed that their friendship had helped Maya find a sense of purpose that connected her professional skills with her desire to honor her father's legacy. After several weeks of consideration, Maya decided to accept a position at the Virginia Beach Naval Medical Center, specializing in rehabilitation therapy for special operations personnel. The decision represented not just a career change, but a fundamental shift toward embracing her family's military heritage in a way that allowed her to make a meaningful contribution to the veteran community. Sullivan helped coordinate Maya's relocation and job transition, using his connections within the military medical system to ensure that she would be placed in a position where her skills could have maximum impact. Their friendship had evolved into something deeper during this process, though both maintained professional boundaries as they navigated the complexities of their growing personal connection. Maya's first day at the Virginia Beach Medical Facility coincided with Sullivan's arrival at his new command. As she began working with her first group of patients, Navy SEALs recovering from combat injuries, Maya felt a profound sense of rightness about her decision to relocate and refocus her career. Her patients responded positively to her combination of professional expertise and personal understanding of military culture. Maya's tattoo, which had initially been hidden under long sleeves, became a conversation starter that helped build trust with veterans who were struggling with their own recovery processes. 6 months after Jake's graduation, Maya received a call informing her that Sullivan had been wounded during a classified operation and would be returning to Virginia Beach for medical treatment. The news brought her full circle to the reality that military service involved constant risk and that the bonds formed within the military community often involved supporting each other through both triumph and tragedy. As Maya prepared to provide professional support for Sullivan's recovery, she reflected on how a single moment of recognition, when his eyes had fallen on her tattoo during Jake's qualification testing, had set in motion a series of events that had fundamentally changed all their lives. The story that had begun with Maya simply coming to watch her brother's SEAL training had evolved into a complex narrative of family legacy, professional purpose, and personal connection that honored the past while building toward a future none of them could have anticipated.